I bought these cute little embroidered blocks at a guild auction, and I was so excited about them. And my sister Arlene Jones pieced them into this little attic window wall hanging, and it's going to be really cute in my kitchen. So I wanted to do each of these very uniquely. But first of all, as I stabilized it, I stitched in the ditch between the borders and around the blocks to begin with, and I completed the border design. I left a little bit of the border design here so I could show you what I did. And I want to make sure that you can see that. So I want to show you on paper what I will be stitching. Here's my smaller border, here's my larger outer border. And I just very lightly chalked in the miter here to the outside of the quilt, and then I also made a mark here where the center of the quilt was. And of course this is the body of the quilt. What I did was I divided the feather between the two borders. So I just started with a teardrop like that, almost like a bow, and then these feathers lean this direction on this inside border. And this is just the long arm feather, very easy to do. And as I come to the miter, you see, I can just put in some little feathers like that to finish in that miter. And then that put me in position so I could follow the stitch in the ditch over to do a straight feather here. It's almost just like a long teardrop, but not closed off. And then these all lean toward the outside. Now what you have to remember is that you're going to have 1/4 of an inch, that you need to have the tips of these feathers on the inside of that 1/4 inch because you'll be binding there. So if you have to put masking tape or something there to remind yourself not to go clear over off of the quilt. Okay, so that's basically what, and then I think I put some teardrops inside here. But I really like this because it's so quick to do, and it looks fantastic on the quilt. You could go back in and you could put stems in these feathers or do them as you go, but I didn't do that. I wanted this nice open look on this little quilt because it's not a big quilt and I think it needed some open space. So that's what I'm going to stitch right now so you can see how fast that goes. I stitched my teardrops, and so now I can begin my feather. And I just leans over like that and then follows the line back. Lean it over and follow your stitch in the ditch. Lean it over and follow. Lean it over and follow. They're so easy to do and so pretty. They definitely are laying down. They're not standing up. They have a direction. And then here's a feather, and then another one, and then finally this one. And then I'll follow my stitch in the ditch over to here. Now I'm going to do that straight one, and I can still see my faint line there. Over like that. And then these feathers are leaning toward the outside, just like the others, so they're all the same direction. And I'm making sure that I don't go clear off of the edge of my quilt because I want the end of that feather to show even after I bind it. So you can just imagine how quickly you can do the entire border on a great big quilt. And you're actually filling in both of the borders. I am sewing in constant because it's very comfortable for me to sew in constant. So I love it. And there's my last one. I talked about stitch in the ditch, but I want to show you how I did that. I try to always think of how I can do it with less starts and stops. So I'm going to start right here where the seam is. By placing my ruler 1/4 of an inch away from the seam, my left hand is in charge of where I'm going with my stitch in the ditch. And I just use my ruler to very carefully follow that line. And across the top, I can usually do my horizontal if I'm just really careful. Sometimes I get out a little bit, but I try very carefully. Or you could put the ruler on the side if you want to. And then vertically again, I'm going to come. I can come quite a bit faster if I hold this just. I've learned to vertically be able to do that quite quickly. And then across horizontally, and of course you can always hold it just in front like this if you have a machine that has the foot so that you won't be hopping on top of that ruler. Then you can hold that like that. Now, because I started right at that seam, as I come up like this, you see I can put this right here and come across this other seam right now without stopping and starting again. And in fact, I also want to stitch on this seam, and that would normally lock somebody right in that corner, but if I just hold my ruler still, I can just go right back up that very same line and right on the very same stitching, and then I just come up this seam, and then I will stop and I will take a few stitches across my little tiny stitches, about 1/4 of an inch in the seam across, and then I can go down and get my thread and bring it up and stop. And that really flattened that and got all of my seams stitched. In this part of the red sashing, I decided I would just do 1/4 inch lines, and that would be very contrasting to what I'm going to do in the pink area. So if I just put my ruler right against my line where I stitched in the ditch, I can just come down like that, and then just come over 1/4 of an inch, put my ruler again right where I stitched, and go up. This 1/4 inch is so easy because your foot is 1/4 of an inch, and so if you just put your ruler right where you stitched, all of those lines will be very even. So that's an easy one for us to do just by using that ruler. Just keep it nice and straight. Keep your hand flat. And it looks like I need one more right there. Now, while I'm here, I'm going to come into this area because I'm doing this one with red thread, and I'm doing this with a feather meandering, and that's simply crescents or half circles, swirls, and you might even echo those as you're doing more crescents. And then every so often put in a little feather, which is a teardrop, and then back and back. Maybe I'll just echo that over here like this to do the other side of the feather. Come back into some crescents. Another swirl. So crescent, crescent, swirl for that feather meandering. Probably one of my most signature meandering techniques. Be sure you do put a feather in. You don't always have to put the whole feather. You could just put half. We'll just do a half of one there. And then come around, just do some echoing, some more swirls. It's so beautiful. It's such a beautiful, elegant kind of meandering. And then I'll just end in the seam there. And now we're ready to change and do our little figures. The first thing I need to do is just stitch around the embroidery itself so that it raises up and stands up. So I put the applique helper on, my thumb goes right there, my hand is nice and flat. I'm in regulated so that I can go a little slower and not worry, not be rushed, because I'm staying right on the outside of the stitching. I don't want to go on the stitching, I don't want to go into the stitching, just around the outside of the embroidery. I know embroidery is, I I have embroidery machines too, and you know, you spend a lot of time doing that embroidery. So you want to make sure that you don't do anything to distract from the beautiful thread and the work that's been done. This way my hand is so close there and can just stay right where I want it to stay. And I just kind of go over where I started there, and that secures them both. You can see that it's already raised up just the way I want it to be. Now I'll cut that thread. I haven't gone clear down and cut the stitching, but I've cut it enough there. It looks to me like this little girl, or I think it's a girl because she has a bonnet on, is doing her hula hoop, and I'm thinking I could probably do some echoes out there on that hula hoop pretty easily. And if I just come out here once at least to echo her once, and then do some echoes out here with the hula hoop to show some action. The other place that I see action is her foot, which is raised up here. So I'm just going to kind of do some little, something like that to kind of show some action there at the bottom of the foot. And I would assume that she is probably outside. I'm going to create some grass down here. So some blades of grass. I'll come over and some more blades of grass. And I'll probably do like 3 rows of this. And then on the side, I think there would probably be, you know, a tree maybe here. And so over here, I can just kind of do some of these half circles, make the branches, and you could put some leaves in there. But if I start the leaves, then I'll have to really just do the whole thing with leaves. So I think for this tree is just going to have these nice half circles. Everybody will know that's a tree. And then as I come over to the side over here, I'm going to create a sun. And just do some shorts and longs. She's out in the sunny day there. So it looks like she is out hula hooping, having a great time. Standing back looking at it, I decided I needed some bark on the tree, so it doesn't look like I just did a line and then there we go. Now I'm happy. It's not done till you say it's done. I've stitched around the applique, or the embroidery, I'm sorry, and then I just came over. I was going to do all grass, but then I decided I'd either put in like a little weed or flower or something there. So this one's going to have a few little flowers in it. We all have dandelions anyway, so, and then I can continue, of course, to just put that grass in. Now, what I want to do up here is, since she's flying a kite, I'm going to have the wind blowing over here. And the wind has beautiful hair, like this. And then when I do the face, I'll come around like that. I'll put the eye in, kind of do a nose, And then I know the lips have to kind of stick out there, and then the chin come in. She looks like a witch right now, but she's not. I'll have this, because she's going to have wind all around her. And out of those lips are going to come the wind. And I have learned you don't have to go all the way back to the lips to get this wind everywhere. There we go. I actually like that. This little girl looks like she's playing volleyball, and I think she's already in the air. So I'm going to put the ground just below. She's already jumped in the air, and I will put, you know, a quilt some lines in like that. But I also think I need to put in the distance a net. And that'll just, you know, just crisscross in here, and so that it looks like a net. And but first of all, of course, I'm going to have to go around the embroidery. Okay, I stitched around the embroidery, and I'm just stitching some lines here to just kind of show she is really jumping high. Maybe I'll just kind of echo here around her. It always also helps fill in, you know, when you're not going to be doing the entire thing. We'll stop right there. I'm going to come over here, and I can drag my thread if I'm not going to cross that area again. So I'm going to come across like that with that net, go up and down and over. And I don't really remember what a volleyball net looks like, but I think people recognize that this is some kind of a net. And I might go across this way with it. Come down and go across that way with it. Okay. And then remember, the ground down here is not going to be right under her feet. It's going to be below. And I'm just going to make these kind of sharp points under here. I'm not sure what a volleyball court would look like. But you could make that really realistic if you wanted to. And then I can finish. I'll just follow my lines through here and come over here and finish the other side of the net. And you know, I think she's going to get the ball over that net. This little girl looks like she's at a park to me, playing in the park. And I'm going to make kind of cobblestones here. So I'm going to make a line here so I know where to go. I'm going to do them dimensionally, so I'll show you how I'm going to do that. And then I will have a tree on this side and a tree on this side. And then just another little spark. To do those cobblestones, I just do half circles across the bottom. And then the next row of cobblestones are going to be a little smaller to give it that dimensional look. And then finally, I'm up to my line now. I'm doing the last row, which is the row she's standing on, even smaller. And then I'll go ahead and do this tree. I'm changing into constant here. And I'm doing this with just some curls. And then the bark. we continue those curls over, it can go right into the next tree. Just curls on top of themselves. I don't know a lot about art, but what I have learned is that the human eye can make out anything to be what you want it to be. So if I want that to be my tree, it will be my tree. And then I can drag my thread here because I'm not going to be crossing that area again. I'm going to go back into regulated. And I think what I'm going to put here are some little notes, like song notes. Just a little, so she's singing or the bird's singing. In any case, it's a very happy day in the park. What I want to say is, ta-da! That's what my 2-year-old granddaughter always says. This is a very simple block, and I just envisioned this little embroidered girl going to a quilt show. So I did very simple lines on the bottom. I just did wavy lines on the bottom, and I quilted 2 squares in the corners. And now I am just kind of decorating these into quilts. Just did some simple zigzags and then putting some curvy lines in between. In this one, I'm just going to alternate just some patterned meandering, making sure that I keep it perpendicular to the outer edge of the square. And then I'll put some curls in the alternating triangles. I'm sure if you really thought about this, you could make a real fancy quilt in here, but this is good for this little project. That certainly completed that. I made sure everybody knows she is going to a quilt show. And this is probably my favorite block.